is why Lafferty's in charge.
And we're live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty. Before we get started, my parole officer likes me to play this introduction. Hang on one second. Ladies and gentlemen, that musical cavalcade is to assure you this is a high production values podcast. Consummate professionals here. Only the finest
farm to table.
Farm to table, ethically sourced, geeky conversation for your podcast listening pleasure. Gluten-free, a little bit of red dive number 5, but other than that, it's all clean. And here we have RPG luminary, Mr. Michael Surbrook, talked about his latest projects. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm sorry, I was adjusting my hearing aids to a certain setting that I think will make it a little bit easier to hear you guys. What did you say?
How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, just hello and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. First time calling.
And my co-host, Mr. Ross Watson. How are you doing, Ross?
I am good. Thank you for keeping me around.
Well, you have those Polaroids from Vegas, so I don't really have a choice.
Yeah, well,
So, Mike, Mr. Surbrook, you have a new book coming out, and here is the cover art. My God, look at that. That is beautiful. Tell us a little bit about this.
What I really love about it is it captures that 1970s comics feel, and I think really encapsulates, and Ross can probably agree because he remembers those days, the early days of Champions when villain books were made by sending stuff into Hero, and how gonzo some of those concepts were.
Yeah, this screams early Champions, which is great because if I'm understanding correctly, the purpose of this book is to kind of bring that feel back to make people acquainted with those original Enemies books.
Yeah, I go into how this book came about in the introduction, but I think I don't think sorry everybody. Let me give you an idea how the book came about. There used to be an APA called Haymaker, which I think, Ross, were you part of that at any time?
Yes, I contributed to several issues.
Yeah. I was with Haymaker for a very long time. And
I think this is actually, I know you pretty well, and I could say with authority that Mike Surbrook right here, has written the most Haymaker articles of all the authors involved. If you count it up.
Including multiple articles about your campaign when one of the issues was like, what's the greatest game you ever played? And it's like, well, here, hold on, let me talk about it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that happened was I contacted Steve Perrin some time back, and I was like, Steve, I basically said, Steve, I kind of like the characters in Voice of Doom, but would it be okay if I kind of moved them over to 6th edition from the 3rd edition? And he was like, sure, just, remember to credit me because it was all for free. And Haymaker folded before I could get that material out. And Surbrook Press being my little in-house or title that I work on or release, I said, I've written all this stuff. Maybe I can do something with it. Now, Steve had passed by that point. So I went to Jason and said, would it be okay if I release these character sheets, for 6th edition with permission all around? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. So if you look up Surbrook Press on DriveThruRPG, you can find Voice of Doom for 6th edition. The characters are migrated directly over. No changes made. I'm not reinterpreting like I would do this different. No, the idea was take their stats as written, just plug it into the new game engine, and make sure everything works with the rules for 6th edition. So some things may need to be changed, it was a lot of fun to do. So I went to Jason after that and said, "Hey, you got anything else I can work on? Is there anything else you would let me do this to?" And Jason and I have a really good relationship. So he said, "Well, I've got an idea. Why don't we take a look at all the villains from Champions the core rule book, the original 64-page rule book, and enemies 1, 2, and 3, and do the same thing. So I started taking those guys and plugging them into 6E. And one of the things that I did, if you pick up the book, and there's like, I don't know, 4 pages where I talk about all the work I had to do, because while the raw numbers work from 1st to 6, how you get to those numbers has changed drastically. So I had to like look at how aid worked and growth and density increase and all these other things. And I had to take a look at, for the first time in decades, I really read through 1st edition Champions rulebook, and like, because I started around 3rd, and I was just like, what is this called? What does it do? How does this work? And then we recreated everybody. Like, once again, the numbers are as exact as we can make it. Certain things change, like if, Ross, you know how Flash works. Well, we had to double all the dice because how Flash's work has changed over the years. And in some cases, this automatically gets an area of effect or it has to get an area of effect because it doesn't have it anymore because how powers work. And but we wanted this to be more than just a villain book. So the other thing that happens is if you get this book and you look up a villain, and I'm looking at Fiacho, which is actually kind of convenient because it shows some of the research I did. Their background and history is exactly how it was originally written. I'm not going to, the only thing I did was run it through like Word and Google and be like, did all these spelled correctly? No, I think there should be a comma here or a period. The other thing, there's a version history. So if you're wondering, where else did this, if you want to look at this character evolve, Fiacho appeared in Enemies 2, and then Classic Enemies for 4th edition, Conquerors, Killers, and Crooks for 5th, and then Champions, Villains, Volume 2, Villains Teams for 6th. And then I have a comments section where I talk about everything that what did I have to do to move this guy over? And I talk about, in this case, he had a really weird form of resistant defenses because of how it was purchased. And then the other thing that each character has, let's see if it'll work here. There's a whole notes and trivia section. And one of the things that I did was I found some Esperanto speakers because Fiacho is an Esperanto word, and they told me how it breaks down and what it means. So if Fiacho in Esperanto translates to either vilest or worse than bad. The book is kind of full of stuff like that. If you Ross, if you remember, you'd always see like KGB or Interpol or whatever. And so I actually, sure, most people know what FBI stands for, but I still jump in and talk about it, like what it means. I also note, like, Fiacho's origin talks about the European Congress. Well, there isn't one. I said, in the real world, it's the European Parliament or the European Union of the European Parliament, which is one of the 2 legislative bodies of the European Union, and the other is the Council of the European Union. So in some cases, I try to throw a real world bit of knowledge so that people going to use these, may have a better idea what they're like. And then, if you guys don't mind, I have to drop my other 2 favorite pieces of trivia I found out while researching this. There's a character called Half-Jack, who's half machine, half human, pretty much split right down the middle. And I contacted Bruce Harlick, and I said, Bruce, does Half-Jack get his name from the Rogers Lasny short story Half-Jack? And he said, yes, it does. And I contacted Steve Peterson, and I said, Steve, did you get Gron's name from J.R. Tolkien in Middle-earth? And he said, yes. And so, of course, I had to add some notes. If anybody doesn't know, Gron is the name of the hammer used by Morgoth. And if you don't know who Morgoth was the guy that was originally the big bad in Middle-earth until he was destroyed and his lieutenant Sauron took over. And if you ever watch the movie Return of the King, that huge battering ram they bring up to smash the gates of Gondor is also called Grond. Gron, they named it in memory of the hammer of the underworld of old. And, so I thought that was pretty cool. And some of the people like Bruce and Steve sent me like additional trivia about Foxbat and Grond and so on. And, things and Ray Greer talked about the fox because he created the fox, which is the guy with the pie.
Yeah, the
on,
Fox of Crime. I remember him.
and it was pretty neat to hear where and some of these characters came from and how they were used, because they weren't all written for these enemies books. Some of them were written for actual campaigns.
It's funny. I think I have a unique opportunity here. You didn't really introduce yourself, but I know you very, very well. So if you don't mind, for our audience, Michael Surbrook is a guy that I've worked with on several books, and a good friend of mine. And I can say with some authority, he's one of the best and most thorough researchers that I know. Everything he does is he understands at a level that is often beyond my capabilities. I think it's also important if you're a Champions fan, which I know several of our watchers are. I could write a whole article on how important Michael Surbrook is to Champions, but I'll just throw a few highlights out there for you guys. So we talked about the APA zines. There was Haymaker. There was Easy Hero. Surbrook wrote tons of material for that. He also kept up a website with just like every write-up in the world of a character from anime or from movies or from television. And he did all this during the long period in between editions of Champions, between the Iron Crown Enterprises era and the current era. He kept that torch burning. And on top of all that, he created one of my favorite settings for Champions, which is Kaze 5. He wrote tons of books. He wrote Ultimate Martial Artist and a few other things for 5th edition and a ton of stuff for 6th edition. This man is a machine. He is, if you cut Surbrook open, on the inside it says Champions. Like legitimately, he is an unsung patron saint of this game, and I think it's a long overdue for you to be recognized as that.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
I have to also acknowledge that BAMF, when their BAMFsies got me, you gave me some awards on a project that Ross and I worked on. We got couple of awards from you guys on Aaron Alston's Strike Force.
Mm-hmm.
Before I met him in real life, to be clear, this was not an inside job.
No, and in fact, and on a project I did solo, which would certainly highlight the research Ross talks about, because apparently several school teachers have given it their stamp of approval, but you guys also gave me a BAMFC for Larger Than Life.
The folklore book. Yeah.
I can, if it matters, I can actually. Yep, here it is. Here's my gaming industry bibliography. BAMFC's Gamer Choice and Judges Award for Best Superhero Product. That would be Strike Force, and then History is Fun product, which was for Larger Than Life.
Nice.
And Ross also, I have to thank Ross, because he and I earned an ENnie for a Warhammer 40K product.
Our very first collaboration, in fact. But anyway, so having digressed by introducing who you are.
I apologize. I should have introduced. I was slipping up on the consummate professionalism I like to brag about so much.
You gave me a once in a lifetime opportunity to introduce him, and I was like, I'm going to take it. Like I wanted this. So
just a level set for any. We got a fair number of viewers tonight. We are talking about Old School Enemies, which is just came out this month from Hero Games. It's a new compendium of Old School Enemies for the Champion system. And because I am a consummate professional, I have made a tiny URL, which is easier for me to say on the air. tinyurl.com/oldschool-enemies. You can check out this awesome book by Mr. Surbrook, and we are looking at the cover art right here, which is very nice and full of lots of weirdness. And I know before the show we were talking about it, but help me out here. There's a vaguely werewolf-looking guy.
That is the Fox. The Fox was created by Ray Greer. Ray Greer was one of the 4 initial founders of Hero Games.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Ray, the Fox was one of the first villains played for laughs. And the cream pie is the most dangerous thing that he will throw at a hero who tries to stop him. And his primary power, well, he's a mutant, which in comic book terms means he has a fox-like face and head, and that's about as far as his mutation goes. And he can teleport, like vast distances, a couple thousand kilometers or such, at full power. And so he teleports, throws cream pies, and engages in like 1960s Batman TV show larceny.
Am I seeing things wrong, or is that the cream in that pie glowing faintly yellow?
I have no. Well, wow, it is. I don't know if it's not. I don't. He doesn't throw glowing pies. I think they just tried to make it real obvious it was a cream pie.
Okay.
But, yeah.
He's a really good baker.
Oh, Ross, a piece of trivia: the fox is one of the first Speed 7 villains.
Wow. Yeah, for the audience, Speed 7's pretty freaking fast. Like,
also, Mike, are you a fan of the movie Tremors?
I like it. My wife's a bigger fan, but I do like it.
Ray Greer is in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Ross, I don't know if you know this, but the shot of the the shot of the graboid coming into the basement, there's a shot where you see can't remember its character's name, but the guy with the gun,
Burt Gomer,
who's been shooting at it. There's a shot that shows like
Burt Gomer.
Yes.
You picked the wrong rec room.
Right. There's a shot that shows just Bert's leg. That's actually Ray Greer because they needed and then there's also, if you know, there's I swear Ray said he's one of the two guys looking at the graboid when it bursts out of the cliff and impacts because they didn't need Kevin Bacon for that shot. So, I think he did special effects for that.
Neat. That's really cool.
In fact,
about this cover.
Yes.
Acknowledge one of our.
I'm sorry. The problem is the trivia about special effects in Tremors reminded me of some trivia about another artist and creator for older Champions and a project he worked on. But I'm not going to sit there. If you guys let me, my ADD brain would wander all over the place.
Well, hey, let's talk about the book for just a second. Also, I want to acknowledge Fallen Empire Citizen just said, "I am wowed by old school enemies." The book is the brain factory going. So
thank you.
I'm going to share. I'm going to remove the cover, and then I'm going to share the Kickstarter page just real fast. Not Kickstarter, sorry, I've been on there too much lately. Drive-through page. So this is a hefty book. We're looking at over 200 pages.
Yes.
Of content. So how many 59 solo villains, 4 agents, and 1 giant robot. So that's a lot of content.
And that giant robot is totally not a Sentinel. Totally not.
It's legally distinct from Sentinels. Not the same thing at all. So, and this it's super new. I mean, July 7th. It just came out like 12 days ago. So, still got that new book smell.
And Jason got me my contributor's copy. Mike, any more questions about all those weird guys on the cover?
There are so many. All right, the torso guy who's not MODOK with the
Green Knight
laser sword, yeah.
So the guy who in green armor whose face is on his chest, and the character next to him who has a bow and has the kind of iridescently weird colored costume were both made by the same man. Don't ask me his name. I don't remember. There's a lot of characters and creators in this book. And he was a really big Robin Hood fan or English myth fan. So Rainbow Archer wears Lincoln Green, which is what Robin Hood was supposed to wear. And she is one of your Green Arrow trick archer characters. Ross, she took a lot of work to rebuild because she had one of the more questionable builds. No, you cannot buy a multi-power of arrows and then buy a naked ranged advantage on a multi-power of arrows. That's not how any of that works anymore. And then the guy in the green armor is called the Green Knight, and semi-true to the legend of the Green Knight. Yeah, he doesn't have a head because the Green Knight gets his head hacked off. If you've seen the recent movie, in that same sort of scene, puts his head back on, walks away. and Gawain has to go meet him a year later so that the Green Knight can lop his head off. And because he shows up and shows bravery, the Green Knight brings his axe down, like barely nicks him if he even does that, and says, "Your honor is kept by just showing up and being brave enough to be here. Go on and do good deeds." So he took a creative look at the Green Knight myth. I can't even acknowledge that the actual Green Knight myth, which I talked about in the trivia section for that character, doesn't quite fit the enchanted headless armor that this character is now, but he's a pretty, I mean, I don't think I would have come up with a guy who looks like a
It's
cross
Modoc.
between,
It's
the
Sir
Black
Modoc.
Knight and Modoc. Yeah.
It's Sir Modoc. Look at him.
Machine designed only for knighthood.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And Mike, just to let you know, if you're like, these are some pretty bizarre guys, Jason asked me to select, and I picked out, I think, what were some of the most garish costumes and costume designs and concepts that were in this book. And also characters that Ross will probably agree on hadn't shown up on a lot of covers before. So we really wanted to get them all out there in all their early 1980s champions glory.
See, the thing I love about this cover is it is eye-catching. It's different. It absolutely puts right on its sleeve, this is a book about weird and crazy characters. And honestly, this cover would prompt me, even if I didn't know anything about Champions, to pick it up and at least look at it. Like I love it because it makes me want to buy the book. So
yeah, I mean, and to be honest, there are 60 some odd villains in here, and there are plenty of normal comic villains, martial artists, and then you project.
They're not all weirdos.
Powered armor, but those guys have all shown up before on covers, and people kind of know those guys because they get all the love. So I'm like, no, we're putting all the more obscure, weird looking guys on the cover this time. And you're right, Ross. It works. It really gives us. I mean, it's a really dynamic cover.
Well, the Frame Brothers are good artists too. It doesn't hurt.
Let me ask you, this guy in the upper right, who's above Sir Modoc, the Green Knight, kind of gives me Ned Kelly vibes. Am I wrong about him?
So the guy in gray armor with a bucket on his head.
Juggernaut.
Yeah, that's the Juggernaut.
Okay.
The Juggernaut is a World War II suit of armor made by Professor Klunkenhissen. So you can. Let me double check that name here.
Oh my God!
Of course, the Juggernaut. Let's see. Professor Klunkenhissen with a K. And if you know Champions has unusual looks or distinctive features, and in fact, he has distinctive features, constant puffs of steam, as well as assorted piston noises. And it uses a unshielded micronuclear pile. So whoever's wearing that armor now is not the same guy that wore it before, because that guy's dead.
Yeah.
And it was a Champions villains. Sorry, it was a villains enemies. Sorry, man, enemies 3 character, and he was fun because it's such a goofy, Captain Marvel 1940s comic book powered armor guy that goes, squeak and hiss and clunks around and thinks he's invulnerable and can punch out tanks and has, his tactics are walk up to it and hit it.
These are absolutely like early Shazam villains. Like
yes.
They have that same feel for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Now some of these other villains on the cover, some of them are very basic. Mike, I'd mention a few, and are you got questions, or you want me to just bounce around?
Well, we could bounce around, but I guess maybe we can start with the lady with the afro and the weaponized frisbees.
So that's Frisbee, who throws weaponized frisbees, and she is an albino African American who apparently who's not blind, but apparently wears like a face mask that covers her eyes, but apparently she can see through it because she doesn't have any weird powers that let her see, and she's a champion frisbee player, and so and decided to take up a life of crime after being rejected or having a bad day. And you're going to be like, well, that's kind of dumb. But let me point out, there's like 6 different comic villains who throw boomerangs. So including Captain Boomerang. So it's not and there's actually at least 1 or 2 that throw weaponized discs. So, and her costume is not described. It was a black and white book, so she apparently wore all white. But keeping with the theme that villains wear green and purple, the Frame brothers colored her in green and purple, which I think was a brilliant coloring decision. She's up there with Doctor Doom and Loki.
And Lex Luthor.
Yeah. And she's, if you know Champions, she's still one of the cheapest, even in 4th edition characters. She only a couple of hundred, she's way below the 400 point for starting supers in Champions 6th edition because she has frisbees. And
listen, I think having her as a street level villain is probably the best because I gotta admit, like if I got up to the Justice League Watchtower level of superherodom and I was facing down with some woman named Frisbee, I'd be like, what am I doing with my life?
Okay. So Batman, Boomerang, Captain Boomerang, Moon Knight, Norman Osborn, various Robins, and Taskmaster all use weaponized boomerangs, and Ricochet from Marvel use flying discs. So she's in good company.
Don't forget Nomad.
Now, granted, if I was going to do a complete 6th edition rewrite, I would give her something like Captain Boomerang, like she carries an assortment of discs or programmable discs so that they can, do more than just hit you with them. But, we weren't doing that. We were translating everybody directly from their first appearance to how 6th edition would handle them. So she has like one attack, which is she'll throw a disc at you.
Well, it's easy to laugh, but I mean, there's a certain Marvel character who basically his main thing is throwing weaponized frisbee. So
listen, I don't know if y'all have been paying attention, but Kite Man is actually cool. And if Kite Man can be cool, Frisbee can also be cool. It just requires a certain perspective, a certain storyteller to come along. Somebody will come along and make Frisbee cool again. I promise.
Well, let's point out, if anybody's an Astro City fan, because I just remembered that character, Street Angel threw halos, and they were originally rubber and just knocked people out. And then he went to ceramic over a steel core when the Iron Age hit Astro City, and he was hurting people. So you could, make Frisbee significantly more dangerous, throw in some martial arts, some various forms of Frisbees, maybe grenades, who knows. And you could have a great street level character who runs around doing comic book weaponry type shtick, and it'll work just fine. I mean, this is not the real world. This is comics. This stuff works in comics all the time.
Static from Static Shock flies on a charged up manhole cover that he also uses as a weapon. So yeah, there's certainly precedent for this. So all right, cool. Who is the fellow? Her right hand is right in front of his chest. The guy in the orange and red with the things on his the interior of his forearms there.
That guy. Wait, so the guy with the blue helmet and the red and orange costume, that is Mecha Assassin, who has one of the ugliest. I'm sorry, I don't want to. You know what? I'm gonna garish. That's the term. I'm not trying to insult the creator. I was just like, oh god, these colors though. Having taken art some color theory, his costume colors were just. But that's Mecha Assassin, who is, like Taskmaster, I just forgot his name. Deadshot? No, who's the guy with one eye in DC?
Deathstroke.
Deathstroke. He's like Deathstroke, he doesn't have Taskmaster's mirror ability, but he's one of those guys who has a ton of gadgets to fight heroes and do crime. And
gadgets, do crime.
Yeah. And that's his whole thing. I'm trying to remember now, I think he's like evil Iron Man. He doesn't have a power suit, but he has a bunch of high technology gadgets that he was developing, I think, for super agencies. Or he went to a criminal super agency and got a bunch of gadgets and decided if you're not going to appreciate my brilliance, I'm just going to be a criminal. And he was around for a while until Steve Long killed him off.
But he's back now.
Well, he's back, at least in this book, yeah. And he's kind of like, even actually he's more like evil Batman because he doesn't have a power suit, but he does have a lot of fun gadgets. You can see there's a shield there. He's got a backpack. He's got like some sort of blaster weapon or dart thrower on his one arm and a shield on the other, and he's got martial arts and gadgets in his face mask and on probably body armor. So he's ready to throw down in a technological way. There's
Backpack.
actually a couple of powered armor guys on the cover, including our Green Knight. I mean, it's magical armor.
A backpack would make so much more sense than a utility belt if you stop and think about it.
It does interfere with the big flowing cape, though, which is a problem.
That's true. That's true. So let's talk about the guy next to Mech Assassin. The guy, red eyes and a Kirby crackle over his left fist. Right there in the center of the book, right above Frisbee. It looks like
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was looking. There's like 3 guys with Kirby crackles.
That's fair.
So that is Cyratron. How was that guy's name? God, that guy has what named it. Yeah, Cyratron.
Mm-hmm.
And Cyratron is the leader of a parallel Earth group called the Corruptors of All, who got exiled to this world. So Cyratron uses thermodynamics to create cold, and he wears a suit of armor, which is, you can see. And yes, he does have purple briefs and such, and boots and such. And his 3 teammates are Gaussian, who, based on that name, you may assume manipulates electromagnetics. And she is the woman in white up above his glowing fist. And then the guy throwing lightning from the, Ross, I was like, OAF or OIF brand on his chest. I'm like, yeah, that's not a focus, guys. You can't, it doesn't work anymore. But that is Sergeant Supreme, who actually should be a little darker skinned because he's supposed to be like vaguely Hispanic.
Listen,
and then the guy in red is Bruiser, who punches you so hard it leaves painful bruises, which, if you know Champions, means he hits you and has a link drain to your PD because he hits you so hard. And Sergeant Supreme can throw lightning from the brand on his chest. So, and they got exiled to Earth, and they are trying to find each other because they got scattered. And once they do, they're going to be your new supervillain criminal organization team.
So, interpreting focus as scar tissue on your chest, that is some creative application of the term focus. I gotta say, I would probably reject that as a GM. I think I'm like, no, that's not really a focus. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, Ross, here's what I have to say about it. Sergeant Supreme's multi-power was originally purchased as OIF chess brand, which is not a valid definition of a foci, especially in the 6th edition, because I did take a look and see, like, and I think it says things that are like some, implants and brands and tattoos are not. I mean, a lot of these some of these characters have wings, not in the book on the cover, but in the book, and they have like OAF wings, and it's like that doesn't apply anymore. There's a limitation called restrainable, which means they can tangle their wings, they don't work, and that's what I swapped it out with because I'm trying to make everything. I didn't get creative. There is wiggle room. In 6th edition, I'll say, well, the GM has final say, and I'm like, I'm not going to do final say. I'm going to go, what is the raw interpretation of the rules? You, as the end user, can do whatever you want. Once you buy this book, those characters are yours to modify.
So, want to thank you for coming on the show and talking about this book. It sounds really exciting. I know I would like to have a copy. What do you think, Mike?
Oh, this looks great. This looks like a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm on board.
Well, Ross, there's another book coming.
Oh yeah, what's the next one?
Well, you'll be happy to hear this, although it took a long time to get it going. We are, I'm guessing, waiting on the cover, but which Dennis Loubet is going to draw, and you may know. You're probably like, oh, I know what that must mean.
I do.
Strike Force Organizations is coming.
Awesome. That's exciting.
And that is, and for those fans of Aaron Alston's Strike Force in the early days, once again, the early days of Champions, Blood, Circle, METE, and a bunch of there's a total of 8 groups in that going to be in there, and it's going to be even a bigger beast than this. And it's going to give you, once again, a lot of research into Aaron's notes and character sheets and everything else to give you a 6th edition look at his universe.
Well, that is very, very exciting. I think we're out of time for the show, so...
If you enjoyed the BAMF podcast, folks, buy us a cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/BAMF podcast. Just like PBS, we need your support, so look it up. Mike, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm excited to hear about task force organizations because we've been talking about that book. Last time I had you on the show last year, you were working on that, so I'm glad to see that train finally leaving the station.
Yeah.
Strike Force organization.
Strike Force, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know when it's coming out. Jason has juggling a lot of stuff over in Champions Land. So, while I'm waiting for that, I'm working on another Champions and hopefully Prowlers and Paragons product, which is called The Shape of Things to Come, which is your H.G. Wells source book.
Nice.
And to give you an idea, like when Ross talks about research, that's what I'm reading.
Good Lord. My hat's off to you, sir.
And that's just his short story collection.
That reminds me, actually, speaking of Prowlers and Paragons, we're going to have Mr. Bill Keys on July 23rd at 7:30 talking about his 2 new releases for Prowlers and Paragons. So,
we may have had a hand in that.
Oh, okay.
One of my characters is in the most recent villain book, and another character I submitted to him, he said will show up next year in another villain book. So I'm very happy to work with him as well, and in what little ways I can, because Blood and Justice is definitely his baby, but it's a lot of fun. And I will tell everybody the fastest do I play this game decision when looking at a con game list was discovering that there was an open slot in Bill's Blood and Justice Lucha Libre game. That was a complete no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, you guys have all got to experience the lovely BAMF podcast tonight, talking about the new Champions book, Old School Enemies. Thank you guys for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lafferty.
Yep, I appreciate you guys joining us. As Ross said, one last time, if you want to pick up this book, you can right now. tinyurl.com/oldschool-enemies. On that happy note, we're going to wrap things up. Mr. Surbrook, thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Ross, always a pleasure. And we'll check you next time, folks, on the BAMF podcast. And hang on, they changed the layout. I almost hit the wrong button. Let me hit end stream. All right, there we go.